Hello and welcome. You're watching Head to Head on uatv, and I'm Olis Gajuk. What should we expect from the IMF mission that is supposed to start its work in Ukraine next week? Will Ukraine get another tranche of IMF money this year? And how is the United States planning to unite its efforts with Ukraine in fighting cyber threats? To answer these questions, we are joined in the studio by Maxym Prazadmikov, Ukrainian economist and former CEO of Logitech in Ukraine. Hello, and thank you for being with us today, Mr. Prazadmikov.
Hello.
So, the International Monetary Fund mission experts are about to start their work in Ukraine. What kinds of activities will they do?
Well, you know, this is the same story as it was previously with previous mission. The main target for them is to get some conclusions, to have some observation about the process which are taking place actually in the country. IMF have certain requirements, and it was discussed several times, and some conditions under which they are ready to support Ukraine with additional funds and with their money. And one of the main targets for this mission is to observe where are we standing right now. So are we in line with these requirements, or at least are we on the way? So what is the process, and where are we right now? So they're gonna check these 5 conditions, which are dedicated actually to providing money.
Yeah, would you be able to
explain which one?
Remind them?
Yeah,
yes,
definitely.
Please.
So they have certain requirements. I would like to remind also that one of them, it was about market of the land in Ukraine, and that was actually in 2017 removed from the point of it as a point of discussion, and it was postponed for 2018. But we have already seen...
we have prolonged the moratorium.
Yeah, absolutely. And most probably it will be postponed as well, and they will not insist on this kind of reform. But on the other hand, they have some conditions and they have some requirements dedicated to pension reform, and we already saw that it was done. Well, actually, we cannot call it completely the reform. It was, I would prefer to say that it was a kind of few first steps to make certain reforms. Yes, absolutely. But at least it was done, and they can somehow count this as it was performed, as it was done. Then definitely they are planning to discuss question of price for gas.
Could you be more specific about this issue?
Yeah, there are certain conditions about price for usage, for private use actually, for normal people for consumption of gas. And the idea was to follow certain calculation and certain formula. And if we follow this formula, it means that already October last year, the price should be increased for 17–18%. It was not done. And our Prime Minister announced that we were not going to increase the price, and we were planning to stay with those numbers which we used for.
Because probably the population is going to protest this.
I wouldn't say that they are going to protest. It's mainly about government support. We are already covering more than 60% of families in Ukraine who apply to get some state support.
So it will be covered by subsidies?
Yeah, absolutely. And it already resulted in fact that last year they have to have special voting to increase the budget for some to look for some additional funds. And if I remember right, it was something like 7 or even 8 billion hryvnia for additional payments to compensate these certain expenses for household. And the idea was that if they increase the price, it will result in nothing, because anyway they will have to increase these payments to common people. And the same story, it was actually announced again a few weeks ago when Prime Minister said that we are not gonna increase the prices, at least till April. And I believe that this will be a subject to discuss with IMF. Either we are going to follow this formula, or we will have some other kind of calculation, which means that we will use a different scheme, not Rotterdam plus, but either just simply Rotterdam or Rotterdam even minus.
So you expect this expert that are going to Ukraine to focus on gas pricing?
Not only. It will be one point to discuss. Then definitely it will be a question of anti-corruption court. And it's a very open question, because we heard the story that there was a kind of law which was offered by President in Parliament, and there was a lot of critics from different structure, including IMF, World Bank, and etc., etc.
Of course.
And they said that it's not exactly what they expected actually, yes. And it's not exactly in line with their requirements. So this definitely will be discussed as well. And the final question dedicated to state ownership for some companies. So they're waiting for privatization. They're waiting that some state assets will be sold. Actually, not only IMF waiting for this, it's a long-term story. And we are definitely need some success story on this side, because except of Kryvyi-Rih, and it was 2004 or 2000, I don't remember, 2005 year, it was privatization of Kyiv. We don't have a kind of success story like this. Every budget, we have a certain money planned, dedicated, coming from privatization, and we almost got nothing, year over year. So definitely this will be also discussed. Perhaps that's it.
Well, and generally the IMF and also, as you mentioned, the World Bank, they were really concerned about Ukraine's progress in reforms. Are they ready to loosen somehow the demands and the requirements for the next tranche of money, which is going to happen in April or in...
Well, first of all, I would like to say that it's really an extraordinary topic and important for Ukraine right now, because if we're talking about previous year, 2017, and we got only 1 billion, except of we were expecting for 3 billions and we got only 1, and actually it was almost in line with those payment we had to pay back. So we paid back 1 billion 100 millions and we got 1 billion, so it's almost equal. This year it's a different story. We have a lot to pay to IMF, to some other financial institutes from whom we borrowed some money, and we really do need this support, and we really do need this 2.5 billions. Of course, it was announced by our government that they are planning to look for some other sources, like they did actually last year when they when they sold bond for 3 billions, as far as I remember. And the plans for this year actually are the same. So they're planning to look for some private investments, not investments, but private money to deal with Ukrainian bonds. And most probably they will do, but it will not be enough. So definitely we need this money from IMF, and we depend on them this year. And definitely they understood this as well. Nobody wants Ukraine to be bankrupt, and they will, with very high chances, they will support us, even if Ukraine will not completely follow all their requirements. And
so
actually,
we can expect for some compromise.
Yeah. And actually, this is a story which I was told by several friends of mine who did participate in World Economic Forum
in
Davos, right? And they said that there was a kind of rumors that based on discussion between President Poroshenko and IMF chief Ms. Lagarde, there is a kind of agreement that IMF will be more concentrated nowadays on economic part of agreement and on economic and financial part. So they will not press so much as it was previously, actually, on following all the requirements. So we definitely need to do something, but they will be more soft in their requirements, I would call this like this.
As far as I understand, we could really expect the next tranche from the IMF this April?
Well, again, this is a story of what we heard from our president, that in April we expect money, actually. I wouldn't be so optimistic about April, so I think that it's more potential date is May, something around May. But actually our Prime Minister said that even June or July, they expect some additional transfer in June and July. My expectation is May. April, maybe not, because it's too short period of time.
Do we need this money to save our currency rate, hryvnia?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the case.
So basically we're dependent on this money right now.
Yeah, and this is the story. This is what I said, because as I said, last year we didn't have such an urgency, and well, definitely it would be better to get this money, because IMF credit, it's a kind of a sign for potential investors, for different financial institutes, that you can invest in this country, you can trust the country. Plus, the second point is that this is the cheapest potential source of money worldwide, because those money we got, those 3 billions we got from private companies, it was with the interest rate almost 7.4. While if we are talking about IMF, the interest rate is something 1.5, 1.6% per year, so 5 times cheaper.
So in order to have more update on this issue, we should just wait for the feedback of the experts from the IMF that are going to come to Ukraine to evaluate the situation. This is the current final situation.
Yeah,
okay,
absolutely.
So now let's move on to other topic on cybersecurity. On February 7th this year, the U.S. House of Representatives passed the Ukraine Cybersecurity Cooperation Act of 2017. So this bipartisan bill, as it mentioned, there encourages greater cybersecurity cooperation between the United States and Ukraine. How would this bill help our country to overcome the growing cyber threat?
Well, actually, first of all, I would like to say that this is not only about our country, it's a worldwide issue, cyber threat. And this was also one of the topics discussed during World Economic Forum. And it was actually agreed that there will be special setup, actually organized by different countries, and it will be like a concentration of total efforts, and there will be a special idea how to fight against cyber threats worldwide. Because in general, as far as I remember, there were kind of discussion that the total potential lost worldwide is something like 500 billions a year, or approximately.
This is an
the
enormous
potential
amount
threats,
of money.
yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And talking about Ukraine, we all saw a story of the last year when in June, July, we faced with cyber attack. And I wouldn't say that the country was completely paralyzed, but we definitely faced with a lot of issues.
Of course.
With banks, with state organizations, with some ministers, and so on and so on. And actually, those situations really showed that we have an issue with this.
Yeah, we had a shutdown.
Absolutely. And it was an interesting story. Everything was working, but in reality, it not. And it was a kind of understanding that we are really in a different world right now. So there is no idea for real weapon, but even with cyber threat, we are in danger.
But what are the provisions of this bill that I mentioned for Ukraine? Or are there any provisions?
Well, I would say that right now, at the moment, there are no exactly steps which are listed in this bill.
So no mechanism, direct mechanism,
absolutely.
how to influence the situation.
As far as I know, there are only a few pages, and it's a very first step, just for understanding. And after that, this bill has to pass Senate, and then it has to be signed by President. With very high chances this will happen, because actually both parties in the United States, this is most probably one of the, not the first time, but definitely a very good example how they can unite, because during voting there was more than 404 versus 3. So it was 99% support of this bill actually in House of Representatives.
Which is flattering for Ukraine.
But again, it's a kind of declaration of those facts that they are willing support. They are willing to give us some kind of educational support, technical support. And there were some statements that they should provide some help with legislation, with setting some procedures, with some technical help. And there was also a statement that there would be somehow controlled, and etc., etc. But again, there was no exactly steps like this. By this date we should do this, by that date we should provide with this technical equipment or whatever. So it's more like a kind of declaration of their strong will to support Ukraine with cyber threat. And that's true. We definitely need that support. But it's still an open question how it will be organized and how it will be managed.
So basically this is a statement that the United States is staying a strong ally of Ukraine.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, this is good news.
Yeah, at least.
Well, thank you so much for this interesting conversation.
Thank you.
That was Maxym Prazadmikov, Ukrainian economist. Thank you for watching UATV.